Well, welcome to Monday. Here we are on the first day of the week, and we're jumping into a whole new chapter of Hosea. We're going to pick up the tail end of the 11th chapter. Those ancient chapter designations didn't always fall naturally within the break in the thought, and so every once in a while there's a verse that actually belongs at the first of a chapter that's on the tail end of another chapter, and vice versa. There's sometimes a verse that is on the tail end of a chapter that really needs to be pushed into the following chapter. And so the word is inspired, but the chapter divisions and verse numberings aren't, but they are helpful. So it's not like an enemy has done this thing and we need to be paranoid. So let's jump right in as we go into this new week, and we're continuing to focus upon God's claims against Israel. While this is going on, we're getting some amazing history lessons because he's always connecting it to his past movement with the people of Israel. He's always pointing to what has happened in the past, how he has been in the past, how they have been in the past, and now what's going on in the present. So let's just jump right in. And we'll look here, picking it up from Hosea 11 verse 12, and then going to Hosea 12 verse 1. If we would have jumped to Hosea 12 verse 11, we would have had a perfectly symmetric palindrome of numbers, which is a lot of fun right now anyway. Early in January, we get a couple of those instances where it is the first month, the second day of the so on and so forth, and so you get those palindromic effects. That's always fun to mess with. But nevertheless, we avoid a scriptural palindrome and we go forward with Hosea chapter 11. Ephraim has surrounded me with lies, Israel with deceit. And so this is the great accusation against the tribe again of Ephraim. The central focus tends to be Ephraim. Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim. Ephraim has been a descendant of Joseph. Joseph was the favored son of Jacob. He was the one who was the dreamer. He was the one who, because of God's work in his life, was able to rescue his whole nation. It is from Egypt that they had come. He had asked that his bones not be buried in Egypt. There's just all kinds of focus upon Joseph, which moves to the tribe of Ephraim. And you have this princely tribe. You have some fine people that come out of this tribe, out of the descendancy, direct lineage from Joseph. Manasseh is well, but remember that Ephraim was the younger son, born in Egypt, but he was placed as the firstborn when he was adopted by Jacob. And then they have the great distinction of providing leadership through Joshua as the people of Israel entered the promised land. And you can just hardly lay any blame against Joshua. And his very name is Yeshua. And there's some great imagery. This Ephraimite named Yeshua is great imagery for the one who is going to come, Yeshua of the tribe of Judah, who is going to sit on David's throne, and he is going to rule and reign over the nations. There's some great imagery here, and the Lord knows this. God knows this. The people of Israel don't know this yet. They don't have the full scope of history, but we do. And we can look at this, and I can't help but when I read these claims and when I see how Ephraim conducts itself, you want to say, oh, how the mighty have fallen. So Ephraim is now taken to constantly lying, outright lying and bearing false witness, and Israel therefore as an effect is partaking in deceit. They are now elevating to a high value this idea of deceit. And Judah is unruly against God. So it is affected even into the southern kingdom, even though they're divided. Down in the southern kingdom, they are unruly against God, even against the faithful Holy One. So the fidelity and the faithfulness of God is being shaken away from by even the southern part of the tribe. Think of it like a sickness or a disease that has spread. And Ephraim has been at the forefront of this, has been the chief instigator of this. And so the Lord brings these charges up with a special emphasis upon Ephraim. He goes on to say that Ephraim feeds on the wind. He pursues the east wind all day and multiplies lies and violence. He makes a treaty with Assyria and he sends olive oil to Egypt. So now he is using as a currency lies and violence, and he is involving himself with the northern people, north and eastern people, Assyria, which are eventually going to come and remove them from the land. And he's going to be sending olive oil. He's forming treaties with these nations. He's putting himself in obedience to Assyria and to Egypt, and he's using olive oil. Now, olive oil was something that was used in anointing, and now this olive oil is being used to make treaties with ungodly nations and to look to them for salvation, to look to them for protection. Something I don't want to skip over, but we can end with this, focusing back on this statement, and something that we can take into our thinking for today as we meditate upon his word. Ephraim feeds on the wind. He pursues the east wind. He feeds on the wind. Now, there is a statement that Solomon uses in the book of Ecclesiastes. He says, all of this is vain, it's empty, it's a meaningless chasing after the wind. That means to be going after things which are actually meaningless. They're not eternal, they're not actually valuable when it comes to God, the kingdom of heaven, and the things of eternity. They will be burned up. They will be rendered absolutely meaningless. Ephraim, who used to be so noble and used to lead so well towards the things of God because of that great influence of Joseph, now is tagged by God here, later in history, as the one who is feeding on the wind and pursuing the east wind all day. They are completely committed to going after emptiness, empty things. Now that's something that we need to identify with today and realize that our culture, the people around us, are deeply invested very often in a meaningless pursuing of the wind. They're going after things which ultimately really do not matter. They're trying to rise in people's opinion. They're trying to be famous. They're trying to be popular. They're trying to get ahead. They're trying to be seen as significant. And all of this is a meaningless pursuit of the east wind. This is a feeding on the wind. When my wife and I talk about making supper and neither one of us wants to cook, we say, well, we'll just whip up some wind sauce and air pudding. That's another way of saying, forget it, maybe we won't eat. You can't survive trying to feed on the wind, pursuing the east wind. Meaningless, utterly empty is what Solomon proclaims to us in the book of Ecclesiastes. So, as we pursue today, let our pursuit turn from meaningless, empty things and towards eternal, valuable things where we lay up our treasure. Jesus said, where a man's heart is, there his treasure will be also, or where a man's treasure is, there will his heart be also. And he says to lay up for yourself treasure in heaven. That is not meaningless, and that is not a feeding on the wind. That is drinking of the water that Jesus offers and eating the bread, that the bread of life, that we would never be thirsty or hungry again. So we see Ephraim. Let's avoid that circumstance, and let's be filled with the things that last forever. The Lord bless you. Have a great day. We'll continue on into the heart of Hosea chapter 12 tomorrow. Hope to see you then.